Hello, everyone, and welcome back to From Within She Rises. Today, we're pivoting back into the woman who ends eras, and we're going to be talking about Demeter. So before we get started, let's drop in. Wherever you are, let your body soften just a little. You don't need to change your breath. I just want you to bring awareness to it. Just notice how it feels going in through your mouth, through your nose, filling up your belly, how it feels coming back out. I want you to feel your feet, just feel the weight of your body, how it is divinely and beautifully and effortlessly held. And let your shoulders fall away from your ears now. I want you to unlock your jaw. Drop that tongue down off the roof of your mouth. And then ask your body quietly, what am I carrying today that isn't mine to project anymore? No answers yet. Just let the question land and just coming back into the room, back into this conversation. And today, like I said, I want to talk about Demeter. And actually, I always have a nice plan every time I go into these episodes, and I have like bullet points. I know what I'm going to talk about. And another layer unfolded for me as I was trying to create space and time today to record this. So we're going to go a little off the cuff later around Demeter and probably offer you a way to look at this goddess in a way you've like never had anyone explain it to you before. As a mirror, of us and of her inside being projected out, which is what happens in our world. So let's talk about who Demeter is and why she is one of the most misunderstood feminine archetypes that we have. Most people say Persephone created winter, right? That when Persephone descends into the underworld, and this is how it was explained to me a lot of times, when she descends down into the underworld, the world dies. And then when she returns, everything begins to bloom again. But that is actually not what the myth shows us. Persephone is taken. That's the event. She's taken by Hades, and Demeter is the response to that. Her mother and her reaction is the response to her daughter being stolen. And Demeter doesn't punish the underworld. She doesn't hunt for a villain. She doesn't ask for a savior. She withdraws life. The crops fail not because Persephone is gone, but because Demeter is fractured on the inside. So the woman that she is, what she's in charge of as a goddess, which is nature, is no longer, she can no longer do her job, right? Her daughter was stolen from her, and now she's fractured on the inside. So the world is going to reflect that fracture. The collective, if you will, reflects the fracture within our inner world. Demeter is not a character. She is a mechanism. She represents what happens when our internal system is overwhelmed, when it is violated or it is grieving, and it cannot continue to produce as if nothing has happened, right? She's also showing us what it looks like, when our external world reflects that way because we're not willing to look inside and heal those pieces of us. How do we heal that part of us that just can't handle whatever's going on? How do we show love and compassion for those pieces? Because she's showing you as a mechanism what happens to ourselves, to our external world, to our collective projection even, because it's not even her external world that really gets the kickback. It's the collective. It's humanity, because now humanity doesn't have the resources that it did before her nervous system was dysregulated. So her nervous system is actually having a physical manifestation and consequence in the entire world. She shows us this law. The external world always mirrors the internal state of those sustaining it. And we all individually have a stake in that. We all individually have a stake in creating the external world. And the faster more of us show up and realize that that is the case, and realize that we need to do the inner work so that the projection, the external projection looks better, the better we're going to be as a collective. And anyways, Demeter's wound was a personal wound. Obviously, her daughter gets kidnapped. That's personal. But the consequence we see, like I said, it is collective. Humanity didn't do the stealing. Humanity didn't take Persephone. And yet, humanity starves. That's not punishment, that's projection. And that's how our nervous system works, individually and collectively. Think about it. You're having a bad day and you're projecting it onto other people in your life that didn't cause the bad day. You're having a bad day because you slipped and you fell in the shower and now you're treating your husband like shit. And now you're damaging this relationship, at least for the day, that it had nothing to do with him. Isn't that interesting? When something is unprocessed inside of us, let it be grief, rage, fear, violation of some kind, or abandonment, the body is not going to reason. It will contract unless we take the time to heal that unprocessed emotion. When it is unprocessed, our body will contract. It will withhold. It will shut down the flow that it's meant to have, whatever that looks like. And it will affect the relationships and the people and the outward projections of you onto the world. You are not showing up as your higher self when you are not integrating your emotions. And when enough people are refusing to do the work, when enough people are not processing their emotions, the world starts to feel chaotic. It starts to feel hostile. It starts to feel scarce. It starts to feel insane. Even now in this very polarized world, because people are doing so much of the integration, we're seeing the insanity on the other side. So how do you keep yourself from being pulled back into it so that you can stay integrated? How do you heal the pieces of you? It's just more work, more and more healing, more and more integration. And I want you to understand that when this happens, when the world looks insane because there's enough of us that aren't doing the work, it's not because the world is broken, but it is because the nervous systems within it are. Yeah. Here's the part that we don't want to hear. When we stay focused on finding a villain, when we stay focused on blaming a system, waiting for a savior, we get stuck in a level of Demeter, the level before integration, the stage of consciousness that needs someone to blame, because blame keeps the pain external and unprocessed. But blame doesn't heal our nervous system. It doesn't. All it really does is it justifies the contraction. And the same is true for saviors. And I know we don't want to say that, but it's true. It's true. If saviors worked up until this point, we wouldn't have an issue. The amount of people in the world that identify as Christians is insane. I understand there's 40,000 or however many denominations, but outside of that, everyone's common denominator is that they're looking for a savior. So if a savior worked, we wouldn't be in this mess. But what a savior says is, I don't have to integrate this. Someone else is going to fix it for me. And both having someone to blame and needing a savior, both are avoidance. Yeah, that's the elephant in the room. You're avoiding. Both keep the loop running over and over again, right? Because when you think about it, if Demeter, we don't see Demeter on the integrated side because we continue to see the Persephone has to stay in the underworld half the year. And as soon as she's gone, Demeter can't stand that. So we continue the cycle. Nobody did the integration. Everyone kept looping in avoidance. And that's what we don't want individually. We're seeing the consequences of what that looks like in this myth as this goddess. Both project both the need for blame and the need for a savior project unhealed internal material outward onto politics, onto religions, onto social media, onto institutions, even spirituality stuff, even spirituality itself. This is why the world feels so polarized right now. A lot of people that are saying they're doing the work aren't actually doing the work. Being awake is not doing the work. And I talked about that today in my reel. It's not, there are many levels of awareness, of consciousness, of awakening. And a lot of us get stuck in the, hey, I see the corruption, I see the villain, and this is now my identity. I can pinpoint these things instead of being like, okay, I see the pattern. And now how does that pattern also live within myself? The goal is not to be perfect. The goal is to integrate over and over again to the point where it starts to happen at a very quick speed, to the point where you start to live more in integration than you do not. And when we see these projections right now, you can see them, like I said, in all of these things like social media and religion, politics, all the things. This is why the world feels this way. And it's not good versus evil. It's regulated versus unregulated nervous systems trying to coexist. Demeter doesn't end the era by destroying the world. She ends it by refusing to sustain a world built on unintegrated pain. Her unintegrated pain, she literally can't even fathom. Her daughter has been taken. She is not processing it. And she's like, I can't do what I'm meant to do. This her own unintegrated pain means she can't do her job, which is sustaining the world. And that is a literal mirror of what we do individually. And when we do that individually, we share these broken nervous systems with other people. Like I said, going back to the idea that something small happened, you fell in the shower, you tripped over my dog is like literally right now eating a bunch of Kleenexes that I don't even know where he got, and they're all over my bed. So isn't it beautiful that this always happens like in real time? That could make me so angry. I could flip out right now. Instead, I'm just going to take a pause. I'm going to clean up the mess and I'm going to kick him out of the room so I can finish this recording. All right, we're back. He's outside playing with his brother, maybe. I don't know. Anyways, like I could let this completely dysregulate me. I could say, F it, I'm not recording this. I could not do what I'm meant to do. I could then take this frustration because now not only did I get mad at the dog, I got mad at myself. I didn't finish my work. And now I'm going to go downstairs pissed off. And I'm going to take this unintegrated nervous system. And I'm going to yell at my children more. And I'm going to yell at my husband more. And now they're in a bad mood. And my husband's going to go get on a work call. And he's going to get frustrated. And he's going to yell at someone else. And it spreads. I want you to understand that your one lack of processing an emotion, an event, spreads like wildfire. So to think that you as a human being aren't part of this projection is wild. Do the inner work, because me taking the dog out of here calmly and then continuing with my work and then going downstairs, and by the time I get down there, I'm not even going to remember what the dog did. I'm not even going to remember that I just spent a couple minutes cleaning up Kleenex that was shredded all over my bed. Like, whatever. It's a shredded Kleenex. He's going to do it again. And, maybe next time I won't be as integrated and I'll flip out a little bit, but the goal is to catch yourself faster. The goal is to integrate faster, right? That's it. You really need to realize that our unintegrated emotions are projected out into each of our relationships. And then they're projected out into the world. You're showing up either safely in your nervous system and integrated, or unsafe in your nervous system and unintegrated and just a hot mess. Here's the quiet truth about the myth, or about our own integration, is that the moment her grief is acknowledged, or the moment I realize, oh, okay, that was annoying, but it is what it is. The moment the truth is spoken, the moment responsibility is taken, it's my responsibility to clean that up because, I left a Kleenex sitting there and I shouldn't have. Lord knows I've had this beautiful sinus infection. I'm just blowing my nose 10 million times a day. But anyways, the moment you integrate, for her, life returns immediately. For me, I'm like, okay, let me just finish my work. Let me just take a pause on this recording. Let me take my dog outside. Let me get back to this. Let me feel amazing having spoken this beautiful truth that I know needs to be channeled through me. And then by the time I get downstairs, life has returned. I am present. I am happy. I am in the moment. And this tells us something radical. The world doesn't need to be saved. It needs to be metabolized. Like, let's bring it back to the book of Revelation, which we know that I love. In the eating of the scroll, it feels sweet at first. And then it feels bitter in the stomach because it takes a lot to metabolize and integrate. whether it's a truth of like something that you're awakening to, or whether it's just your dog shredding a Kleenex on the bed, or whether you're Demeter, what needs to happen is processing, metabolizing the moments, feeling safe enough in our nervous system that we can do those things, that we can metabolize, that we can integrate. And I won't really want to going back to today's reel about the 5 stages of awakening. They're all happening at the same time. The borders are not clear. They're smudged. And like integration for one, I don't know if it's something that we ever finish doing. And I've talked about this on here before. Like, do we ever stop integrating, metabolizing? Probably not, right? But the point is you catch yourself, right? Like you catch like, oh gosh, that's annoying. But then you're like, okay, this is why it happened. That's okay. I'm going to go clean up this mess. I can solve this from this calm, integrated nervous system. I see the solution instead of just seeing the rage, right? It's being able to process faster because you feel safer within yourself. It's the idea that every time we process an emotion, an event, and we do so lovingly with compassion, we teach the neural pathway thing again. We create these neural pathways to go straight to that, straight to integration, straight to zooming out and being like, okay, why did this happen? Okay, how do I heal? Okay, what part of me needs some love? And when we metabolize those things, we don't need to save ourselves. We don't need to save the world because we're showing up as beautiful, integrated pieces of our community, of our collective. And whether we realize it or not, every moment that you integrate, you are making a shift in the collective, right? Because in some other timeline, you didn't integrate and you yelled at your dog and you didn't finish your work. And then you went downstairs and you yelled at your kids and you yelled at your husband and they were crying and he did this and he did that. And it spread like wildfire. And so every time you metabolize, every time you integrate a moment that feels unsafe in your body, you hold the love and the compassion and you take a step to zoom out and see where the wound is, what needs to be held. You are healing not only yourself, but the collective. You are choosing the timeline that integrates, that metabolizes, that feels more love. And you're passing that forward way farther than you could possibly understand. Way, way farther. So when we clean this internal world, not by spiritually bypassing it, handing it off to God, not by blaming it away, that stupid dog is so evil. That dog's doing exactly what he's meant to do. He's meant to eat the Kleenexes, and I left the Kleenex because I was freaking tired. And I'm allowed to be freaking tired and leave the Kleenex sometimes. So that's okay. And we're not outsourcing it either. The external world will reorganize itself on its own because you're choosing the timeline where you sat down a second, you breathe into your body, and you integrated and you saw past the rage. You held the rage, you felt the rage, and you understood it. You took it as the messenger it was always meant to be. And it's not because we force it, right? We're not forcing the external world to reorganize, but our projections of unhealed nervous system, they stop being necessary when we take a minute to integrate, to take a minute to look within ourselves. So this is your reminder to bring in Demeter as an understanding, as a mirror for you, to understand that you're choosing the integration or not every time, that you are choosing to show up as the woman that either took a breath and allowed herself to feel the grief and find a way to find her daughter, which she did. Spoiler alert, we're not talking about that today, or you are flipping out and you're pushing that projection outward, right? You're going to either be the woman that takes the breath and integrates, or you're going to be the woman that flips out and can't do her job. Whether it's yelling at your dog and not finishing the podcast recording, or it's your daughter gets kidnapped and you're Demeter and you're in charge of the world and you're going to starve humanity because you can't fathom doing what you're meant to do, what your obligation is. And you get to choose. She's showing you what happens. She is literally showing you the pattern on a collective level. She is showing us that it's not just about us having a bad day, because we then show up for everyone in our lives having that bad day. And when we show up for everyone in our lives having a bad day, anyone that can't integrate themselves is going to pay. It's going to double that and pass it on. I feel like all I see is that on TikTok. Double it and pass it on. Things that you don't want. Sometimes they're good things, but anyways, this is an example of not a good thing that you want to double and pass on. If you're looking at like human design, the idea that, um, oh, non-emotionals, I'm a non-emotional. We do double that and pass it on. We do. That's literally what we do. As an energy system, as a human whose emotional solar plexus is wide open or just undefined, you are literally taking on the emotions of others and you are deciding in that moment, can I integrate this? Can I hold space and understand where it's coming from and show love and compassion for this part of me? Right? Or am I going to flip out right now and I'm going to double it and pass it on? Because that's what you do, right? Like, as somebody who can't become the container that holds and integrates, you literally double it and pass it on. You feel that more deeply than the person that's projecting onto you, and you pass it on, right? So think about that too, because you wonder why the collective is such a mess if like half of us are non-emotional, half of us are emotional. The moment you step into an interaction between somebody that's non-emotional and that isn't integrated, and you're like, you didn't integrate, you have just passed that on. They're going to double it. They're going to double that emotion that you've repressed, and they're going to project it out. So Demeter is a good reminder that actually our internal worlds have an impact on every person around us and on the collective as a whole. She showed us literally exactly what that looks like. When something horrific happens and you don't allow yourself to feel it, and you repress it and you don't process it, and in that it trickles down, and humanity is now starving. So if you're feeling overwhelmed by the state of the world right now, I'm not telling you to disengage. I am calling you back home to ask, what am I carrying that I am projecting? Where is my nervous system still bracing? What grief have I normalized instead of integrating? Because every place you heal inside removes one layer of winter from the collective. And that is how eras actually end. Not with war, not with a savior, but with enough people individually choosing to become safe places for life again. All right, so before we leave this heavy conversation, this is a heavy one today, I want you to take one more slow breath in and out. And just remember, you don't fix the world by fighting it. You change it by no longer needing it to carry what you haven't yet held yourself. So thank you for being here. Thank you for doing this work with me. And as always, thank you. I love you. I'll see you in the next spiral.